People, young and old, form a community, a network of interdependence which ideally cares for its elderly, respects its workforce, educates its youth, nurtures its young. How a society treats its children reflects its respect for human potential and concern for the future. The care, education, and protection of young children should be a responsibility shared by parents and the entire community. However, parents are often isolated in their efforts to provide well for their children. They must work to support their family and care for their children at the same time.
My children are ages 6½, 4½, and 21 months. I need after-school care, full-time preschool care, and infant care. I receive $550 a month. If I had to pay for private care for my children, my child care bill would be about $400 a month.
After the family has been in this community for a longer time, the mothers may be able to find some part-time jobs of which they can take their child with them, such as sewing factories. But as we all know, a sewing factory is a very crowded place with a lot of land as well as sewing machines around, and we'll find infants as well as toddlers and young children playing around this kind of very unfavorable environment.
Why did the need for childcare develop, and why has it continued to grow? Why has so little been done to provide childcare services? The need for childcare was first felt in the 1800s when rapid industrialization demanded more workers. Immigrants from Europe, Russia, and Asia were joined by Americans migrating from the countryside to cities in hope of making better lives. In the factories, wages were so low that often the entire family had to work. In the countryside, people had worked at home and cared for young children at the same time. In the city, with work removed from home, care became a problem. Often, children were left alone. Some were placed in orphanages by their parents to ensure their feeding and safety. Mothers took their children to work, even to such places as cotton mills.
The boss is good and lets me have a little box with a pillow inside it beside the loom. The baby sleeps there, and when it cries, I nurse it.
In some cities, day nurseries were established by wealthy women. They believed that women and children belonged in the home, yet felt immigrant homes were inadequate. The nurseries were primarily to socialize and Americanize immigrant children, not to provide child care. Despite this attitude, some families were able to benefit from these nurseries. The notion that mother should stay home with the children while father worked intensified in the 1920s. At the same time, an increasing number of families depended on women's wages for survival. Full-day nurseries continued to meet some child care needs, but were looked upon as a service for distressed and neglectful families. Meanwhile, child development studies in universities concluded that children needed educational and social experiences before elementary school. From these studies, part-time nursery schools for middle and upper-class families were established. Children were further segregated by class. With the Depression of the 1930s, the federal government entered into early childhood programs for the first time.
There's a better world that's coming, tell you why. Better world that's coming, tell you why. Out of marching, out of battling, you can hear the chains are rattling. There's a better world that's coming, tell you why. Now there's a better world that's coming, and there's a better world that's coming, and there's a better world that's coming, and tell you why.
By 1933, 1/3 of the population was living with no source of income. Massive protest led to several social service programs, including nurseries, under the Works Progress Administration. These nursery schools were set up primarily to provide jobs. They were intended for children who were suffering because their parents were unemployed. Only 40,000 were served each year by these educational programs. The Depression began to lift as the United States became involved in World War II, which created many new jobs. With men at war, government and industry desperately needed women workers. Many entered the workforce for the first time. Lack of child care services forced many women to leave their children alone, often right outside the work site. Angered by the situation, parents demanded child care services. To attract and keep women workers, government and industry quickly mobilized their resources to provide child care. Services were often extensive, including sick child care, 24-hour care to accommodate swing shift, and a meal service. For example, the Kaiser Shipyard Center served 4,014 children from 18 months to 6 years of age, 7 days a week, 24 hours a day, 364 days a year. Because women workers were needed in massive numbers, the government for the first time provided concrete support to working mothers. Still, many families did not have needed child care. Government and industry saw child care as a temporary emergency service. The war ended, and they withdrew their resources overnight. Only in California and New York were parents successful in keeping the centers open. As men returned from war seeking jobs, women were encouraged to return to the home. Despite heavy propaganda, the number of women in the workforce continued to increase. Private care, often profit-making, grew to meet some needs. In the 50s, mothers who worked outside the home were again portrayed as neglectful and irresponsible. Child care remained a private problem.
The civil rights movement of the 60s focused on glaring poverty endured by thousands. People throughout the U.S. demanded that the federal government provide assistance for poor families. The government, much like the social do-gooders 50 years earlier, seized upon early childhood education to eliminate future poverty. The intent of programs was to re-socialize poor children. Such programs as Head Start were established to provide low-income children with a preschool experience in the hopes of increasing their success later in school. Similarly, federally subsidized full-day child care, now Title 20 centers, were originally established to reduce welfare rolls. A demand for workers in low-paying jobs surged as a result of expanding economy and Vietnam War production. These jobs were often filled by women. Many had young children. Child care again became a public issue. The women's movement of the late 60s demanded that all should have access to government-supported child care, which did not segregate children by class. For some women, child care promised more opportunities. For others, it meant they could continue to work, assured that their children were safe and happy. For children, child care promised an enriching experience.
The more we get together, the more we get together, the happier we'll be. For your friends are my friends, and my friends are your friends. The more we get together, the happier we'll be.
The demands of women, families, and communities led to the expansion of government child care. As the 60s closed, hopes were high for further commitment of public funds. Instead, the 70s brought increasing unemployment, high inflation, and cutbacks. In 1972, the publicly funded child care centers were threatened.
I think one of the primary reasons that child care in specific is being cut back is there's a lot of unemployment, And women are being blamed for that because they're coming into the workforce. And so they see this as an easy way to keep women out. If women don't have child care, then they can't work. And women, of course, aren't the reason for unemployment. There's just not enough jobs, and women need to work as badly as men do for the same reasons, to support their families.
Year after year, people have fought attempts to eliminate or cripple services.
We try to mobilize the parents and community. We get together to have meetings to decide how to act. We want to make it known to the government that parents need childcare services and that children need quality education. We want the government to respond to us.
Our government's response has been that there is no money. But no money for whom?
I think cutbacks are being made in child care and other social services because they don't produce enough of a profit. You know, they consume a lot of money. It costs money to take care of kids and old people and build houses and things like that. And the return on the money can't really necessarily be seen in terms of dollars and cents profit, but only in profit to the community and to the human society. And those profits are not considered important at all.
Consider child care workers. In spite of their educational training and experience, child care workers earn close to or below the minimum wage. Women who take care of children in their own homes, family daycare providers, earn even less.
Today, with rising prices, it becomes harder and harder for families to provide for their necessities. Maria works for Bank of America, bringing home $500 monthly. Her income is essential to the survival of her family. She faces a dilemma. Private child care, if available, is expensive. She cannot afford the fees, nor can she afford to quit work.
My youngest son is not quite 2 years old. I've been trying to place my children in daycare for several months. One center that had slots available, and there was also in the immediate area, was asking $250 per child per month.
But if Maria tried to enroll her children in a government-subsidized center, she would soon discover that there, too, the wait is long and the chances for enrolling her children are slim. So what happens to our children? What are the government's priorities? And how much of the child care need does the government actually meet? Recently, taxpayers have been yelling, "Stop our rising taxes and eliminate wasteful government spending." The result was that someone got a big tax savings, and government spending was reduced. And now we know where priorities are.
They give out pennies here and there, but I'm feeling satisfied. To set up centers for child care, I'm feeling satisfied. And while we work every day at slave wages, to brainwash our kids at tender ages, and I still ain't, whoa, they like, not still ain't, whoa, they like, not still ain't, whoa, they like, not still ain't.
What if priorities were different? What if society were organized to meet the needs of the majority of people instead of a few? Then support to families would include quality child care and additional supports to working parents, enough jobs and non-exploitative working conditions, decent affordable housing, and good health care. Quality child care would include infant, preschool, and after-school care for all children who needed it, multicultural and bilingual educational programs, parent and worker involvement in decision-making, social services and health care, including arrangements for the care of sick children, adequate staffing to meet the needs of individual children, and decent pay, good working conditions, and training for child care workers. Most European countries are far ahead of the United States in providing child care services. In Sweden, estimates are that 75% of the child care need will be filled by 1981. In socialist countries, child care is provided to free women to play a more equal role in society and to educate children early in values of cooperation, self-reliance, and respect for work.
History shows us that the government provides child care services only when convenient for itself and private industry. In recent years, parents and workers have obtained child care only when they have organized in their communities and workplaces. They continue to fight not only to expand and improve child care, but also just to maintain existing services.
The Chinatown Children's Fair began about 3 years ago when a group of workers and parents got together and decided to obtain more childcare services for the community. So they thought one way of doing it is to get together for a fair so that the public in general around this community can get to know what childcare is all about, and then to mobilize the public to petition and to engage in various kinds of activities to get more money from the government to provide childcare services. The first Children's Fair was so successful, and it has such a rejuvenating effect on the organizers that they decided to stay together after the fair.
After several years, the result of their work has been a new center and an information and referral agency for the Chinatown community. Employers and unions can sponsor childcare, though few have done so. Perhaps the best known are the 7 centers in Baltimore and Chicago operated by the Amalgamated Clothing and Textile Workers Union. The employer contributes to a fund which is administered by the union that supports these centers. The union also lobbies for increased government funds for child care. They have obtained legislation that enables unions to bargain with employers for contributions to daycare services. The vast majority of child care workers are not in unions. Members of the Boston area Daycare Workers United are currently organizing workers with District 65 Distributive Workers of America. They have written a model contract for child care workers. They have stated,
"We need to create a large, unified group of daycare workers, not just to fight cutbacks, but to gain a say over the future status of daycare."
Small groups of family daycare providers have joined together to obtain funding and support services. Compañeros del Barrio in San Francisco is an example.
The benefits that the providers are getting from our program are support and contact with other providers, workshops, the food distribution program, and some security and reimbursement from the state.
Well, really all started in August when the struggle really started, and the Board of Education was trying to close down the schools. If the center had been closed, I would have had to stop my job training at school to be able to find enough time to take my oldest son to school, which was transferred up to another site, and have enough time to get my smaller son to a babysitter. So we started off with marches with the children, protesting, talking to the Board of Education, but we kept on fighting. We found ourselves making more noise and more noise. He started hearing us then. One day we was down there and we took about 30 kids down there. He called the riot police on us.
We simply got a number of people, mostly parents from the center and from the Geneva Towers community, to man the center and continue to operate. We got a lot of support from all kinds of different places, sending us money, food, and we simply continued to operate the center. The main thing I think we learned from the experience is that because we were as determined as we were really successful in the sense that we were able to keep the place open without any funding whatsoever, just living from day to day for 3 months, and then finally did get a grant to stay open on a somewhat permanent basis.
And I think everyone should know you should struggle in whatever you believe in. Whether you win or lose, it's good to feel at least you tried. And I'm glad to say Geneva Towers Children's Center is open today.
This slideshow was produced by Parents and Workers United for Childcare, a San Francisco Bay Area organization formed to fight for the expansion of quality, low-cost childcare. We see childcare as only one of many issues in the long-term effort to obtain a society which meets the needs of its people.
We've got to do something, yeah.